Welcome to the secret of the stars. In the faraway American state of Kansas, there is a vast gray prairie where monotony and solitude seem to be the eternal melody of the land. In one part of the prairie lives a little girl named Dorothy, who runs a small farm with her Uncle Henry and Aunt Em. Dorothy's life is uneventful, and if there is one thing that brightens her world, it is her little black dog, Toto. Toto is like a little elf, jumping around the farm all day long, and his liveliness and loyalty have become the warmest comfort to Dorothy's heart. However, the gears of fate began to turn inadvertently. It was a seemingly ordinary day when the sky suddenly changed and a terrible tornado swept through like a demon. The winds howled as if they were going to swallow up the whole world. Dorothy and Toto were so frightened that they hurriedly hid in their house. The house shook violently under the force of the tornado, as if it were a flatboat in the gale, in danger of being destroyed at any moment. Dorothy hugged Toto tightly, her body trembling slightly from fear, her heart beating frantically in her chest. At that moment, her mind was blank, with only the fear of the unknown following her. In that frightening moment, the house was uprooted by the tornado and swept high into the sky. All Dorothy felt was a spinning of the sky, and everything around her became a blur. Her stomach turned over in a terrible way. It was as if time had frozen in the moment, and as if a long, long time had passed. Finally, with a loud crash, the house landed heavily on the ground. Dorothy slowly came to her senses after a moment of dizziness. She carefully pushed open the door of her room, and the sight before her made her eyes widen instantly, her heart filled with shock and amazement. The original monotonous gray grassland had long since disappeared, replaced by a dreamlike world. Here, flowers, colorful flowers like stars, scattered in the lush grass between, trees tall and straight, branches and leaves, like a huge green umbrella, for this piece of land held a piece of cool, clear bottom of the brook gurgling, the stream in the sunlight flashing golden light, like the flow of the Milky Way. The sky was as blue as a jewel, with white clouds floating in the air like cotton candy, and the breeze gently whisked by, bringing a burst of floral fragrance and fresh breath. While Dorothy was immersed in this beautiful scenery, she found that her house fell right in front of a group of dwarfs, the Munchkins. The Munchkins were small and wore brightly colored clothes, and their faces were full of surprise and excitement. It turned out that when Dorothy's house fell, it happened to crush the Wicked Witch of the East. This witch had long been doing wrong in this land, bringing endless pain and suffering to the Munchkins. Now, with the overthrow of the witch, the Munchkins have finally regained their freedom. To show their gratitude to Dorothy, the Munchkins gave her a pair of silver shoes. The shoes were beautifully crafted, with a sparkling gemstone on the upper, which gave off a charming glow under the sunlight. Dorothy accepted this precious gift with joy, but the only longing in her heart was to be able to return to her native Kansas. The Munchkins read her mind, and they tell Dorothy that in this magical land there is a magnificent emerald city where a great Wizard of Oz lives. He, and he alone, possessed the magical power to help Dorothy realize her dream of returning home. So Dorothy firmly put on her silver shoes, held Toto tightly in her arms, and resolutely set out on the yellow brick road to the Emerald City. Traveling along the yellow brick road, Dorothy's eyes were drawn to a rice field. In the center of the rice field, she saw a scarecrow stuck high up on a bamboo pole. The scarecrow was dressed in tattered clothes, his head was a pocket full of straw, and his eyes, nose and mouth were painted on with paint. He looked a little funny, but his eyes revealed a hint of despondency and helplessness. Dorothy approached the scarecrow curiously, and when the scarecrow saw her, a gleam of hope flashed in his eyes. He told Dorothy his troubles in a slightly hoarse voice. "I'm a scarecrow, and I have no brain, so I don't know anything, and I can't do anything. All I can do every day is to stand here and watch the birds flying freely in the sky and the people working hard in the fields, and there is nothing I can do about it. How I wish I could be as smart as other people, to be able to think and learn." A feeling of pity welled up in Dorothy's heart as she listened to the scarecrow's words. She thought to herself, although this scarecrow is lifeless, he has the same emotions and desires as human beings. So Dorothy smiled and said to the scarecrow, "If you want, you can go with me to the Emerald City to seek help from Wizard Oz. Maybe he can give you a smart brain." The scarecrow was so excited at Dorothy's words that he almost fell off his bamboo pole. He hurriedly said, "Really? Are you really willing to take me with you? That's great." With that, he jumped down from the bamboo pole and set off with Dorothy and Toto on a journey full of unknowns. They continued along the yellow brick road, and soon after, in a wooded area, they heard a strange sound. It sounded like the crunching of metal on metal, and like heavy footsteps. Something in Dorothy's mind scared her, and she held on to the scarecrow's hand as she cautiously walked forward. As they rounded a large tree, a strange sight appeared before them. There stood a man whose whole body was made of tin, with a sharp axe in his hand, and with every step his body made a crunching sound. When this tin man saw Dorothy and the others, a friendly smile appeared in his eyes. He introduced himself. "Hello guys, I am the Tin Man. I was originally an ordinary person, but because of an accident, my body was replaced with an iron skin. Now, although I have a strong body, I don't have a heart, so I can't feel happiness or sadness, nor can I experience love or warmth. I've heard that Wizard Oz can help people fulfill their wishes, and I want to go to the Emerald City to find him in the hope that he will give me a heart." Dorothy and the Scarecrow listened to the Tin Man and felt sorry for him. Dorothy said, "You are so sad. If you want, you can come with us to the Emerald City, and we will go to Wizard Oz together to get help." When the Tin Man heard this, he said happily, "Great, thank you." So, Tin Man joined them, and the four of them headed towards the Emerald City together. In a thick forest, they encountered another majestic lion. This lion was huge with a thick mane and looked very fierce. However, when he saw Dorothy and the others, a hint of fear was revealed in his eyes. The lion stammered, "Hello you guys, I am a lion. Although I look very powerful, I am actually very timid. I am always afraid of encountering danger, and I want to run away as soon as the wind blows. I hate myself like this, and I want to go to the Emerald City to find Wizard Oz, hoping that he can give me courage." Dorothy looked at the lion with some surprise in her heart. She didn't realize that this lion, who looked so fierce, was so cowardly inside. Dorothy encouraged the lion, "Don't be afraid, everyone has their own weaknesses. If you want, you can come with us to the Emerald City, and we will overcome difficulties and find courage together." The lion heard Dorothy's words, and a surge of courage came over him. He said, "Yes, I will go with you." And so Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the lion formed a strange little team, and with their own dreams and hopes, they marched determinedly along the yellow brick road toward the Emerald City. They traveled on the yellow brick road for a long, long time, experiencing many hardships and obstacles along the way, but they never gave up. Finally, on the far horizon, they saw a city that shone bright green, the Emerald City. The walls of the Emerald City were tall and thick, all built of green glass. Under the sunlight, the city walls shone with emerald green light, like a dream. The city gates were huge and grandiose, inlaid with all sorts of gems that gave off a colorful glow under the sunlight. As they approached the gates, they realized that everything in the city was green. The houses were green, the streets were green, and even the people's clothes and skin were green. The entire city was full of life and vigor, as if it was a green fairy tale world. They entered the Emerald City with awe and anticipation, and came straight to the palace of the Wizard of Oz. The doors of the palace were closed, and at the door stood a dwarf dressed in green. The dwarf saw them and asked, "What are you doing here?" Dorothy stepped forward and said, "We want to see Wizard Oz, and we want him to help us fulfill our wishes." The dwarf heard this and said, "Wizard Oz is very busy, and not just anyone can see him. You guys wait here first, I'll go and inform." After saying this, the dwarf went into the palace. Dorothy and her companions waited anxiously outside the palace, and time seemed to pass for a long, long time before the dwarf finally walked out. He said to them, "The Wizard of Oz has agreed to see you, come with me." They continued on their way, and soon came to a wide river. The water in the river was deep and fast, and there was no bridge to cross it. Dorothy did not know what to do, and she looked anxiously at the river. At that moment, the Scarecrow said, "We can cut down some trees, make a raft, and row across." Everyone thought the Scarecrow had a point, so they started to cut down the trees. The Tin Man used his axe and quickly cut down several large trees. They tied the trees together and made a raft. Dorothy, Toto, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion carefully boarded the raft and then, using the branches as oars, began to paddle the raft. In the middle of the river, the current was even stronger and the raft kept rocking as if it might tip over at any moment. Dorothy hugged Toto tightly, her heart filled with fear. But no one gave up. They worked together and finally managed to cross the river. After a difficult trek, they finally came to the castle of the Wicked Witch of the West. The castle looked eerie, and there was a dark atmosphere around. The Wicked Witch had long known that Dorothy and the others had come, and she stood on the castle's walls, looking at them coldly. Her eyes glittered with an evil light, and a hideous smile appeared on her face. She said loudly, "You stupid guys, how dare you come to challenge me? Today is your end." After saying that, she cast her magic and sent a flock of crows flying towards Dorothy and the others. The crows covered the sky and their beaks were like sharp hooks, pecking towards Dorothy and them. When the Scarecrow saw this, he opened his arms and spun around. His clothes and straw fluttered in the wind, forming a barrier to the crows' attacks. The crows were confused by the Scarecrow and fell down. Seeing that the crows were unsuccessful, the Wicked Witch took out another golden hat and recited an incantation. Instantly, a swarm of black bees flew out of the hat. The black wasps buzzed and flew towards Dorothy and the others. The stings of the black wasps were long and sharp, so if they were stung, it would certainly be very painful. The lion was a little frightened at the sight of the black wasps, but he remembered what he had come here to do, so he plucked up his courage and roared. The lion's roar was deafening, and the black wasps were so frightened that they fell off and died on the ground. Annoyed, the Wicked Witch took out a silver ruler and tried to use her magic to turn Dorothy and her companions to stone. Just as she was chanting the spell, Dorothy accidentally threw a bucket of water on the witch. The witch's greatest fear was water, and she let out a scream as her body began to melt, and all that was left at the end was a broom. Dorothy and her mates cheered when they saw that the witch had been destroyed. They went into the castle, found the witch's broom, and left the castle with it. They returned to the Emerald City with the joy of their victory. When they met the Wizard of Oz again, the Wizard of Oz was very pleased with their bravery. He said, "You have done well, and you have proved your courage and wisdom by successfully killing the Wicked Witch of the West. Now, I can grant your wishes." For the Scarecrow, the Wizard of Oz filled his head with pins and tacks to represent brains. He said to the Scarecrow, "These pins and tacks will make you smart, and you can use them to think and learn." The Scarecrow touched his head happily. He felt his head was filled with new knowledge and ideas. He said excitedly, "Great, I finally have a brain." For the Tin Man, Wizard of Oz put a red heart made of silk on the Tin Man's chest to represent the heart. He said to the Tin Man, "This red heart will make you feel happy and sad, and allow you to experience love and warmth." When the Tin Man looked at the red heart on his chest, he felt a warmth welling up in his heart, and he was moved to say, "Thank you, Wizard of Oz, I finally have a heart." To the lion, Wizard Oz gave the lion a bowl of green liquid to drink, saying it was a potion of courage. When the lion drank the potion, he felt that his body was full of strength, and he became more and more courageous. He roared with joy and said, "I'm a really brave lion now." As for Dorothy, Wizard Oz said he would take her out of the country and back to Kansas in his hot air balloon. Dorothy was very happy to hear this. She would finally be able to go home to her aunt and uncle, whom she had thought about so much. However, when it was time for the balloon to take off, Dorothy missed it because she had to look for Toto. She watched the balloon slowly rise into the air with despair and helplessness in her heart. She thought she could never go back, and she sat down sadly on the ground and cried loudly. Just as Dorothy was feeling desperate, Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, appeared. Glinda was dressed in a white robe, with a wand in her hand, and she had a kind smile on her face. She walked over to Dorothy, gently stroked her head, and said, "Child, don't cry. You have always had the power to return home, you know. Your silver shoes are the key to getting home. If you touch your heels to each other 3 times and say where you want to go, you'll get your wish." Dorothy's heart rekindled with hope as she listened to Glinda's words. She hastily stood up and followed Glinda's method, touching her heels together 3 times and mouthing the words, "Take me back to Kansas, back to Uncle Henry and Aunt Em." In an instant, she and Toto were surrounded by a bright light, and when it had faded, she found herself back on the farm in Kansas. Uncle Henry and Aunt Em were busy on the farm, and they were surprised to see Dorothy back. They ran over and hugged Dorothy tightly with tears of excitement in their eyes. Dorothy also shed tears of joy, knowing that she was finally home. And the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion lived the life they wanted in Oz. The Scarecrow used his intelligence to help the people of the Emerald City solve many problems. The Tin Man used his love to care for and look after everyone around him, and the Lion used his courage to protect the peace and tranquility of Oz. They all became the heroes of Oz, and their stories were passed down in this magical land. Do you like this story? Follow me. Here is a treasure land of fairy tales. Moreover, there are numerous long-form bedtime fairy tales on the home page, which, like magic, weave sweet dreams for you to listen to.